Okay, thanks for tuning back in to our reading of Hegel's lectures on the history of philosophy. And we really want to dive into the text and read it together, so I hope that it can contribute to a wider um, perception of Hegel, where these difficult texts are actually deconstructed for people who suffer from his difficult language. Now, what we encounter next is the question of relativism. And it is the idea that, superficially, it is the idea that all opinions are equally valid and that there is no difference between me saying something and you saying something, no difference in any position we hold. But I want to actually suggest a different notion of relativism, and I believe that Hegel was a certain kind of relativist himself. Now, what we usually associate with relativism is a so-called moral kind of relativism. I have to sneeze again. I always have to sneeze when I sit here. Okay, but I'm sorry for saying that. So usually we deal with a kind of moral relativism that somebody says, yeah, no, I don't follow any rules. I just have made my subjective guidelines for myself. And this was also what Hegel was pointing out, that he doesn't believe that personal conviction should be the foundation for a system of truth. And again, I want to develop a relativism that includes truth. And yeah, I don't think either that just like the subjective conviction is enough to convince us in a society. You can live like that, but I believe then you are actually expelling yourself from society. And if you go too far with your subjective truths, you will die. So our life form does not allow this, well, I personally believe. Does that, however, mean that we know the mind external reality? No, it does not. It just means that with a life form that we have established for ourselves and that was given to us through the biological processes of evolution, that with this kind of life form we are kind of successful. So, and we often come up with an argument against relativism, and we say if relativism teaches that there is no objective truth, then wouldn't that mean relativism cannot be objectively true? And this is usually the argument of a so-called performative contradiction. That means that I act like very absolutely, there is no truth, you stupid morons. And of course there would be my performance, and on the other hand the content of this performance, and they would contradict each other. So I don't follow that view. I want to say, let me clarify what I want to say by relativism. So relativism means that so far I haven't seen a convincing argument for mind external truths. I think they are flawed, and I have studied them for quite a long time, and I didn't see them. Maybe somebody else has an argument, so I'm open for them to convince me that they have an objective truth about mind external reality. Now, however, as long as they cannot convince me, I say we have the second best candidate. And that is to say, well, I don't know the truth so far. My aim is the truth. I want to know the truth, but I don't know it so far yet. So therefore, let's just operate on a base that is relativist. And what is this base? I tell you, it's our commonly exchanged experience. Yes, that's a relativism. For example, I say we have figured out in science that when we do these and these experiments that everybody can follow, that we get these and these results. What do you think? Do you agree with me on these experiments? If you do them, you will experience the same. And somebody says, yeah, I basically agree. And then we have found a truth that we can share in relationship to this empirical evidence that we have. But at the same time, we agree if somebody comes up with a phenomenal experiment that just contradicts these experiments that we have done that we are capable of changing our position. And I think that's a very reasonable position that is very successful, especially in sciences. So I don't see a necessary problem with this kind of relativism to be a workable solution for our societies. I say we don't need absolute truths. We need something like empirical evidence. So, and this means I'm not saying like, okay, 2 + 2 = 4, 2 + 2 = 5. You're both right. You both get an award. Great, well done, my students. I say no. For the sake of the project that we do right now in our society, 2 + 2 = 4 is just so reasonable because it aligns with so many thoughts that we have in math, and that makes that math applicable to our common life phenomena. It's that easy, and I still claim that's a relativism, right? So, but I can understand that a lot of people are annoyed by relativists who just say, yeah, well, whatever everyone thinks is okay, everything's possible. That's annoying, right? And these are people who just study or who just try to conceal their cognitive dissonances, who try to actually conceal them from themselves. So I understand that point of view. But I hope I could clarify with what I mean with regard to relativism, and so that we can use this notion to see how much that actually comes to the fore in the text of Hegel. And let's just jump right back into this text. I mean, we read the lectures on the history of philosophy still, and as far as you can remember, there was a decisive contradiction, because if philosophy is about the truth, how can it have a history? And we worked ourselves through and we said, well, we want to have a history of philosophy that is concerned with the objective truth, but obviously we need to make progress towards it, we need to reveal it, and this can have a history of thought that does not involve what kind of individual actions I necessarily did when I got up, brushed my teeth, and went to the restroom, and so on and so forth. It's more a question of how we contribute to the labor of the mind of discovering the truth. And this is what we agree on. And what we now see in philosophy is that there are many positions that contradict each other. And that is where we say, well, how can that be? And if even great minds erred, shouldn't then I think the same about myself? And that is where we ended the last episode. And we said, I give you an interpretation of the quote that I left open. So Apostle Peter spoke to Ananias, "Behold the feet of them that shall carry thee out the door. Behold the philosophy by which thine own will be refuted and displaced shall not tarry long, as it has not tarried before." So what Hegel wants to say here, according to my interpretation, you might have a different interpretation, he wants to say that there may be already a philosophy waiting for you that is carrying your arguments outside of the door and says you're wrong. And you have to admit that you erred. So how can we then claim that we really deal with truth? So let's get on explanatory remarks on the diversity in philosophies. And let's just dive in deeper. Let's dive deeper and deeper into the Hegelian sea of thoughts. Okay, certainly the fact is sufficiently well established that there are and have been different philosophies. Okay, we agree with that. There are different philosophies. It's a fact. The truth is, however, one. So yeah, different philosophies, but the truth is just one. Like, that's the same contradiction, just in another shape now. And the instinct of reason maintains this ineradicable intuition or belief. It is said that only one philosophy can be true. And because philosophies are different, it is concluded that all others must be erroneous. I hope that's how you say it. So, yeah, we say there can be only one philosophy, so all other philosophies must be untrue. Now, that's a right way of looking at it. I'm not sure, let's go on. But in fact, each one in turn gives every assurance, evidence, and proof of being the one and true philosophy. Yeah, that's everyone who you meet. They say, yeah, well, but my philosophy is true, right? They always assure that their philosophy is the right one. So there's a notion of truth already included in all these diverse philosophies. There's a commonality. There's no philosophy that says, yeah, my philosophy is probably wrong, but listen to what I have to say. No, nobody does that, right? This is a common mode of reasoning and is what seems in truth to be the view of sober thought. As regards the sober nature of the word at issue, thought, we can tell from everyday experience that if we fast, we feel hunger either at once or very soon. Oh man. So why does he talk about hunger now? By the way, I'm a little bit hungry. I hope my stomach does not make too many utterances. Okay, so as regards to the sober nature of the word at issue, thought, we can tell from every... Yeah, so yeah, we feel that there's something not satisfying about the thought that every philosophy utters that their truth is the only truth, right? We want to see a little bit more justification for that. So it's just a metaphor that he uses here. Hence, the thought expressed in such an utterance reveals the fact that it is dead understanding, for it is only death which fasts and yet rests satisfied. Okay. So yeah, the people who actually express that their philosophy is the true philosophy, and you should just follow them by virtue of an intuition, they are they have a dead understanding. They don't see that they have to justify their philosophy, and yeah, they are satisfied with whatever they have. And you meet them very often, like these people. They say, I don't know what you mean. Like, I mean, look around. There's the truth. Like here, table, very hot. Ha, truth. But neither physical life nor intellectual remains content with mere abstention. As desire, it presses on through hunger and through thirst towards truth, towards knowledge itself. It presses on to satisfy this desire and does not allow itself to feast and find sufficiency in a reflection such as this. Okay, so we don't want to rest. Like, truth is something that is an innate desire of humans, like hunger. And I agree with that. Also, a relativism is in itself not satisfying. We still want to push forward to find better theories that we accept as being better expressing the truth of our surroundings. And this may be a truth of human beings, that we are truth seekers. I'm not denying that one. And this is also true for relativism. As to this reflection, the next thing to be said of it is that however different the philosophies have been, they had a common bond in that they were philosophy. So all different philosophies are philosophy because they seek for the truth. That's what I say, not Hegel yet. Thus, whoever may have studied or become acquainted with a philosophy of whatever kind, provided only that it is such, has thereby become acquainted with philosophy. So whoever studied ever philosophy has already knowledge of what philosophy is. That elusive mode of reasoning which regards diversity alone and from doubt of or aversion to the particular form in which a universal finds its actuality will not grasp or even allow this universal nature, I have elsewhere likened to an invalid recommended by the doctor to eat fruit. Oh, Hegel, such long sentences. So, okay, we have a delusive mode. So we are talking here about somebody who's like impaired in his understanding. And this is the one who doubts that he has found universality because he has just particulars in front of him. And yeah, there is, in anything that is particular, there is universal included. The question is whether we can distinguish the individual and the universality very well. And he says this is very similar to an example that he comes up, and that is an invalid, like I guess a sick person, recommended by the doctor to eat fruit, and who has cherries, plums, or grapes before him, but who pedantically refuses to take anything because no part of what is offered him is food, some of it being cherries and the rest plums or grapes. So yeah, so I'm sick and like the doctor recommends fruits and I want to have the universal fruit. I don't want to have the particulars, right? And so that is what Hegel also says about philosophies. Well, they all include parts of the truth, parts of the universal, and not just parts of the universals. That's maybe a wrong way of saying. They include the universal, but they come in different shapes that are determined by the individual. So actually the universal is always delivered to us in form of a compound of universal and individual. And that's why we never see fruits. We just see cherries, plums, and grapes. And even in this case, we always just see individual cherries. But it is really important to have a deeper insight into the bearings of this diversity in the systems of philosophy. So we want to now understand more, why is there diversity of systems of philosophy? Truth and philosophy, known philosophically, makes such diversity appear in another light from that of abstract opposition between truth and error. Truth and error. Okay, so it's not just that we have one philosophy that is true and the other one errs. They somehow all participate in a process of discovering the truth, I guess. So the explanation of how this comes about will reveal to us the significance of the whole history of philosophy. So philosophy is a history of discovering the truth, of people discussing and debating together. We must make the fact conceivable that the diversity and number of philosophies not only does not prejudice philosophy itself, that is to say, the possibility of a philosophy, but that such diversity is and has been absolutely necessary to the existence of the science of philosophy, and that it is essential to it. So debate and diversity in philosophy, contradiction of different philosophical systems, is part of the essence of philosophy. Now, isn't that interesting? To make it easy to comprehend the aim of philosophy, which is in thought and in conception to grasp the truth, and not merely to discover that nothing can be known, or that at least temporal, finite truth, which also is an untruth, can alone be known, and not the truth indeed. Okay, so this is the central sentence that I had a problem with, because it seems Hegel says here that we really can know the truth, and this truth is not that nothing can be known, but it is also not that we only have finite truth that is temporally true for a certain amount of time. And I actually was a bit bothered by that sentence, so I looked up the original German, and I don't know so yeah, but I don't have the German sentence here. I can maybe put that in the notes here. Probably I put the German sentence in the notes. Because the German sentence says that it is a common assumption that the aim of philosophy is grasping the truth. And I agree with that. So this is a predisposition of doing something in the world to grasp something that is true. Okay. Now, I'm not talking necessarily about mind external objects. I'm not saying that the truth discourse, as Foucault would criticize, is the dominating discourse. But I'm saying that there is something that we call the truth, and that is somehow guiding our lives. What this truth is, we still have to discover. Okay? So I claim it's not mind external truth that guides us in philosophy. It's a truth about ourselves, but we have to look further into that. So this sentence bothered me a bit because it seems to contradict my mere relativist position, and you may have a different interpretation on what Hegel is saying here. That's fine, because diversity is part of the essence of philosophy. Further, we find that in the history of philosophy, we have to deal with philosophy itself. So philosophy then, even when it comes in history, is philosophy itself in all of its different shapes. Even when I say your philosophy is wrong, it's still philosophy. The facts within that history are not adventurous and contain no more romance than does the history of the world. They are not a mere collection of chance events, of expeditions, of wandering knights, each going about fighting, struggling purposely, leaving no results to show for all his efforts. Okay, so my goal is also not to present a history of philosophy without connecting it to the truth. Same for when we read Hegel. We want to connect it to a truth and we want to figure out more about the truth. That's our goal. Otherwise, it's just an idle project that we're doing here. We are not knights who just fight, chop off their arms and legs, and who do that for the sake of entertainment. Okay, so nor is it to so that one thing has been thought out here, another there. It will, in the activity of thinking mind, there is real connection, and what there takes place is rational. So we really do something in all of these philosophies together that we can call, in a certain sense, rational. It's not about irrationality. It is with this belief in the spirit of the world that we must proceed to history, and in particular to the history of philosophy. And I leave the interpretation of the sentence up to you. Thank you very much for following me until this point. So let me know in the comments, what do you think about relativism? That would certainly be interesting. So, and if you have enjoyed this, or if it has given you some insights, this lecture, then please subscribe and follow. Give me a like, hit the bell, write a comment, follow me on my other channels. For the rest, live long, read Hegel, and prosper.